For me, this podcast has a simple mission, and it is to act as a bridge between our generations. We talk about life, we talk about culture, music, their successes, their failures, their regrets, and their legacies. Welcome back to the H to H podcast. My name is Mide. It's nice to have you here. Thank you for tuning in and checking out this episode. Now, this episode is different because my guest and I, although we are in the same country, almost the same city, we're kind of spread apart, and it was a challenge to find the time and to find the space to meet and have this conversation. So we decided to take it virtual. My guest in this episode is Ms Tola Ayeni, and Ms Tola Ayeni was introduced to me by a friend of the podcast and a previous guest on the podcast. She is a financial coach and a mom, and in this conversation we explore topics that I have never before explored on this podcast, and I can't wait for you to listen to the rest of the conversation. So without wasting any more time, let's get on with the podcast. Oh, and just before we get into the podcast, something that really helps this platform to grow and to reach more listeners is if you like and if you enjoy what you hear in the conversation, why don't you hit the subscribe button below, and why don't you also share it with a friend? Conversations like this are something that I like to think of as a digital campfire, and which essentially means that the more of us gather around the campfire to listen to the oral tradition that has since been lost as a way of communicating from one generation to the next, the more of us get to gather around and sit and listen to these conversations, the more we have to benefit from one generation that has gone ahead and leveraged their experiences in our generation. All of that to say, it really helps if you like, share, and subscribe, not just this episode, but the podcast in general. Thank you. Let's get on with the podcast. Thank you so much for being here again. I really appreciate the time. I like to start like this with all of my guests, and I start by asking, what is your full name?
Tola Ayeni.
Great. And where were you born?
I was born in London.
Oh, what year were you born?
1965.
Oh, wow. So this year is a significant year for you then?
Yeah, it is.
Do you remember at the time of your birth what either your mom or your dad did for a living?
So they were both here in London. My dad was studying for his accountancy qualifications. My mom was working 2 or 3 jobs, maybe. She was into management. I think they called it institutional management at the time.
Okay. Are you the first, or what position are you, or how many siblings?
Number 3 of 4.
Ah, wow. Growing up, were you a close-knit family? Were you close with your siblings, or were you spread apart?
I would say we were close growing up. I mean, there's just 2-3 years in between us. So we were close. We did things together. We're 3 girls and 1 boy. And it's interesting that even though the 3 of us claim to be different, the girls, we tend to do things similarly, which is really quite funny.
Are you most like your dad or your mom in terms of your behavior, I guess?
I think in a lot of ways, I'm like my dad. I was a bit of a tomboy growing up. People say to me that I speak my mind. I'm not what you would call a girly girl. What else? But in other ways, I also see myself behaving more like my mom as I grow older. So sometimes when I say some things to my daughter, I would just shake my head. I would be like, that was so like mommy. So I think for me, number 1, it's almost a carbon copy of mom. Number 2, almost a carbon copy of dad. And I was like the mixture, if you like.
I'm guessing if there were 3 girls, was there any chance for you to be a daddy's girl, or was that spot already taken by one of your sisters?
I actually was in some ways. I think my dad liked me, and then eventually in terms of qualifications and career. I'm the one that took after him. But my dad was very, very strict, and him liking you meant that you got punished the more. So I didn't really, when we were growing up and people would say, "Oh, your daddy's girl," I'll be like, "No, I'm not," because I didn't want to be.
What was it like in your family growing up? I mean, did what in my family growing up, we had Saturday afternoons. My dad would always have fella playing, and we still had to do all the cleaning up and everything else because I guess my mom was very traditional and very strict as well. So it always makes me curious if that was the same experience everybody was having, or if my family was very unique. I don't think we were very unique, but what was it like in your family growing up? Were you all huddled together, doing the same things, or just what was the atmosphere like?
Well, I mean, my memory is that we used to watch TV together. And I remember that even from an early age, I kind of liked watching TV. I remember Barbie Show, and I would be in front of the television dancing to all of those music. My dad wasn't very much into music, I would say, but he was very particular about his groups, his societies. He had a Wednesday Society of Friends. He had the Town One, the Elisha Social Elite, and they would always have meetings. Like the Elite would have meetings every Sunday, or maybe I just felt it was every Sunday. Maybe it was once a month. I don't know, but it just felt like, and they would go all out. And whenever it was our turn to host, it was a big deal,
Wow.
pounded yam at the ready and all of that stuff. Yeah. So my dad was very, I wouldn't say very, very social, or I can't, to be honest, I can't remember actually him sitting with us and watching TV with us and all that. But when it comes to like books, yeah, that was his thing. He used to buy us like novels and things that we would read. So he created that reading culture in us, and he was also into academics so much so that some of us got beaten a lot because of because of academics. Yeah.
I'm thinking. So you grew up in the 60s and 70s, right? In London. What being
Well, I didn't actually grow up in London.
okay,
I was born in London,
right.
and then I was shipped, literally shipped to Nigeria. So
How
we
come?
went on the
Why?
ship. So,
How come? Why were you shipped? Why were you shipped to Nigeria?
so my first sister was born in Nigeria, and she was left behind in Nigeria. And my parents then came over to study, so they had a little one in Nigeria which they couldn't see. And it wasn't the days of internet or phone or anything. They were getting airmail letters like once in 6 months. So I think it took a toll on my mom. My dad was still doing his exam, and I think my mom just woke up one day, and by this time she had two other children, which again, she wasn't seeing us during the day. We had to be with foster carers. So she was only seeing us like weekends and stuff like that. So I think she just felt like, what am I
This
doing?
isn't worth it.
I've got
Yeah.
three lovely children. I'm not really spending time with any one of them. I'm going back to Nigeria. So she just went and resigned her jobs and told my
Wow.
dad, you sort yourself out. So we left dad here, and we went back on the ship. So I don't remember that because I think I was less than two. So I don't remember that period at all. It's just
Wow.
based on what I've been told. But I know we went on the ship. I've had stories about my sister singing nursery rhymes on the ship and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Wow. So you grew up mostly in Nigeria then, and
Yeah.
then wow, that's really interesting. Uh, so primary school, secondary school, all of that was in Nigeria.
Yep.
What primary school did you go to?
So the first one was Yaba Methodist School.
Is that in
I
Lagos then?
got in Lagos, yeah. Yaba Methodist School in Lagos. I got moved around quite a bit. The three of us, the three girls went to Yaba Methodist School. My brother was still so very young. And I think when they finished, I think they felt the need to move me nearer home. I can't remember what this. So I then got moved to Ideal Girls School. That school no longer exists. I tried to locate it, but it no longer exists. We had this lovely yellow uniform. And I would say the people that were jealous of our uniform, they used to call us yellow fever.
And then, okay, so primary school, secondary school, are you, I mean, from what it describes, from what it sounds like your parents did for a living, I'm guessing you and probably your siblings are quite academic as well. Is that, would that be correct? Are you like, are you,
Yeah, yeah.
you're,
Because eventually my dad qualified and then came back to Nigeria. I think he came back when I was around 8. That was
okay.
my earliest memories of him coming back. So he was an accountant. He always worked with figures and all that. And in the meantime, mom was working with Lagos University Teaching Hospital in the catering department and all of that. So they were both very academic conscious. Yes,
How
yes.
much of what they did or how they lived their lives influenced your trajectory in terms of what you now do for a living?
Um, Initially, I didn't actually think that I had been influenced because initially I didn't really my route to where I am now was not linear. I didn't go in thinking, oh, I want to be an accountant. I really was that child that didn't know what they wanted to do. Um, I think I did physics, chemistry, maths, and I wanted to do something along those lines. So engineering, computer science, but getting into uni was a bit trickish and all that. I ended up studying agricultural economics.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I
That's
graduated
very,
and
very different.
it was, yeah, it was what I could lay my hands on. So
Sure.
I graduated and it was like I couldn't actually get a job. Everybody was saying, "Oh, you need a second degree, you need a professional qualification, and all that."
Wow.
And thankfully, I had served in an accounting firm, so it wasn't really my choice. I have to say, I had served in an accounting firm, and when I couldn't get a job, I continued with them, and it was assumed that you were going to do your accountancy qualifications. So
Wow.
I did it afraid. I did it very afraid. And then I
Wow.
qualified as a chartered accountant. So my dad was very, very proud. I remember the day I was getting my, is it induction they call it? And he was so, so proud. So it felt like, to the outside world, it felt like I took after my dad, but
But
I
you
got
knew
there
that
in
the
a
road.
roundabout kind of way. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's very interesting. To take a step back then to your, I guess, teenage years or teenage life. My teenage years were very. I wasn't the popular kid, but I also wasn't like the wallflower. Somewhere in between. I like to think of those years as very average. My teenage years and everything else. When did you start to realize that you are who you are in terms of the self-awareness that comes up when you're like, okay, I know I tend to be this way or I tend to be that way. I think it was very late for me, but it makes me curious as to if you like your generation and each individual person, because of the makeup of the family and Nigeria at that time, when do you feel like you started to feel like, okay, I know who I am, I'm self-aware, this is what makes me do this is what makes me do that.
I think it was very, very late. So what I remember of my upbringing, 4 kids, the first two were like the grown-ups, and the last two, it was like you, you don't even have a say in anything. So I was someone that I felt a bit insecure growing up, all those teenagers. I saw a picture of myself at age 16 and I was like, I pity that child. So, and then I was very conscious about weight and all of that stuff. So my teenagers were sort of a blur. In
Wow.
fact, some of my secondary school mates now, they say things like, oh, they used to fancy me then. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, it was just not on my radar. I was just oblivious to all of those things. And because my parents were quite strict, I think I was just going on autopilot. I just wanted to please them. I just wanted to stay out of trouble and all of that. So I don't think I really discovered myself when, technically or biologically I should have. And maybe that even accounted for some of the mistakes that I made. I would say that it's later in life that I started to discover myself. One of the things that helped me along the line was when I was in uni, I joined the drama group. And up until that time, everybody thought I was quiet. So when I joined the drama group, I remember two people were arguing about whether I was supposed to be or not to be in drama. And I was there and I sat down and I didn't say a word. And they were having this debate about it. But all of a sudden I realized that I could be somebody else, you know? So I loved that. I took to that acting.
That's
So it just
very
made me
interesting.
realize that I actually did have a voice. I knew inside of me that I always had an opinion. It's just that I didn't feel it was worth sharing it, because if people are not going to listen to me, why do I bother? And I think even till this day, I could be in a meeting and be quiet. And if somebody were to say, "Oh, Tola, what do you have to say about this?" Then I'll just go ahead and say something, and they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, that's a good idea." But I just feel like if you're not going to listen to me, there's no point in me saying it. So a lot of
Interesting.
people would have thought that I was quiet, but I don't think I was ever really quiet. I'm just a reserved person. It takes me time to.
It's funny. I feel like I'm reaching here, but I'm connecting the dots between what you said earlier about being the third of four, and the two older ones, and the three and four just kind of left to go along with it, and what that meant in terms of you were just kind of seen and not heard, and how maybe that sort of, because you then described something that has followed you and has become a part of your personality, which to me just seems like they go hand in hand. How you're sort of not trained, but you're brought up feeling a particular way, and so you carry yourself that way into later years, kind of thing. I mean, would you say? I mean, that's not really an insecurity, especially if you're aware of it. Then it's something you can work against. But would that be the kind of insecurity that you've had to train away, or sort of combat as you've gotten older? Insecurities like that.
Yeah, I mean, I had to learn to have my own voice and use it. Because what then happens with people who don't use their voice is that you expect a another to know what you're thinking or feeling, but you have not actually expressed it. And that creates conflict. And you can feel like, oh, I've been wronged, but the other person is oblivious to what you're talking about. So it creates issues with relationships, friendships, and all that. So I started to learn. Now, when you start to learn to use your voice, it can also create conflict,
Oh yeah.
because now remember that the people in my life are not used to me speaking up. So all of a sudden I just say, yeah, I want to say this, I've got an opinion. And they're like, no, 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 no. And I'm like, no, you know. So that tends to happen. But at the end of the day, I am a firm believer in you train people how you want them to treat you. So if you've trained them in one way, you've got to retrain them in the other way. So yeah, I had to understand that, no, everybody doesn't reason the way I reason, and everybody is not going to, assume what I'm thinking. Especially we're not brought up in the same home and all of that
Yep.
stuff. So
Yep.
I had to learn that for myself, and I had to say, okay, this is who I am. I can be a very happy-go-lucky person, playful and all that, and I can be a very serious person, and invite people to know me in that kind of way. So yeah, it's something that I'm learning. I can't say that I'm fully,
It's a
yeah,
work in
but
progress. Yeah.
yep, yeah.
So earlier on, you described being a tomboy growing up, and along with some of the other things that we've discussed, it's making me think or wonder, at what point did romance enter into the picture, or enter into your story? And for some people, and it's funny, in some of the previous episodes, for some people it's been much earlier than I would have assumed, and for some other of my guests, it's been a lot later than I would have assumed. So there doesn't seem to be any sort of pattern, or one size fits all. It kind of seems like everybody comes to it when they come to it. So I'm curious, when did when did you begin to have a romantic life, either in a crush or secondary school? You know, how did that come about for you?
I think I would say mine was later, and there were certain contributory factors. Number one, my parents were strict. And I remember there was something that happened. This is a funny story. When I was in secondary school, um, I used to walk home. We lived in Ikeja. My secondary school was in Ikeja. So we used to walk home. And I think that this guy, I think he was from UI at the time. I think he had talked to some people and shown an interest in me, and some people had kind of given him a lowdown that if you want to talk to her, talk about academics, talk about books, talk about library, talk about stuff like that. Otherwise, she would not even give you the time of day. He had done his own work. So we were walking, and then a group of us, and then he came and he was chatting to us and greeted us, and everybody greeted him, and we were talking and talking. And then the topic got to like, oh, he was doing his project and da 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 da. And I got carried away with that, and I just started talking. Oh yeah, you can do this. I think he wanted to do something about free education in Lagos State. What were our thoughts? And I just got carried away, and I was talking. And by this time we had reached my house, and then all of a sudden I realized, oh, we're home. I didn't intend for him to get to know my house. So I just tried to excuse myself and leave. Then I think the following Saturday, lo and behold, I was doing my house chores, and I had some clothes to spread. And as I opened the door,
There
who
was a
did I
boy.
see?
There was a boy there waiting for you.
He was just coming into the gate. Thank goodness he had not knocked on the door. When I saw him, I think I froze. And then I got, even though it was just me and my eldest sister that was at home, my parents were in at home, but I was still like,
What's this?
what's he doing here? Who told him to come? And I just went round the back, spread out the clothes, went back inside through the kitchen. I didn't even say a word to him.
Wow. Oh, and so there was no conversation. There was no.
In my mind, I was like, I'm dead today. So secondary school, nah, I wasn't into that. No way. It just wasn't on my radar at all.
Interesting.
And even when I got to university, yeah, by this time, I had become a born again Christian. I was attending the Christian fellowship.
Also,
and
sorry to cut you, but growing up, what were you kind of religious but not practicing, or what was?
I was, and yes, I made a commitment when I was in secondary school, but I was still very much not knowing what I was doing. But
Right.
by the time I got to university, I was quite serious with it and all that. And then I think, a few people kind of came to me. I don't think I was ready still. When I think about it, I don't think I was ready. And I didn't think that they were the people for me anyway, because even now when I look back and I just thought, now, what tends to happen is that when you're prominent in that kind of circle, you attract so much, and I was prominent in the sense that I belonged to the prayer band, and, there was this thing about
you were in
us,
the right groups.
they pray, they were, so I think I was kind of attracting the wrong people, and I wasn't really interested. But the person that I was interested in, which was maybe towards my second or third year, I don't think he was interested in me. So by this time I was in my 20s.
Okay.
I was in my 20s. So I actually graduated 25, nothing. So It was when I was serving that I met my ex now. It was when I was serving. Yeah, he was working in the same company where I served. And he was in the admin department, I was in audit. And it was his responsibility to take me around and introduce me to everybody.
And that was his route to market.
That was his route to market. And then during when we had our break period, he just came around and said, "Oh, do you know where you're gonna go for lunch?" And then he supposedly was showing me where to go for lunch, and then
Taking you
yeah,
for
we
a
kind of went
meal,
for lunch
yeah.
together. So that's how it all started. So I was a very my mom always used to say then, and I didn't understand it then, but now in hindsight, she always used to say that we were late bloomers, and I think that she was very correct about that. Yeah.
Do you think it had to do with the being sheltered growing up? I feel like your priorities are different. I think the kind of things you value are different. So then romance kind of takes a backseat, because it's not to say that in other families where the kids aren't sheltered, it's just romance all the time. But I feel like if you are sheltered, or if you think if your parents are strict, it really helps you prioritize things differently.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of them being strict, and then having that religious background and all that. Even growing up, before I went to uni, I was in the choir. I was doing all of those things. I somehow it just wasn't on my radar. And then I think also the maybe because I was also very tomboyish. I wasn't into my looks or whatever. I think the kind of people that I was attracting were also not the kind of people for me. So, sometimes when somebody comes and I remember in uni, one of my friends said, "I hope you're not being proud." But I said, what I actually said to the guy, and we're still friends today. What I said, no, I didn't say it to the guy. I think I said it to my friend. I said, if I were to say yes to this guy on the basis that we're both Christians, I would be the one to kill him. And then I think I was like 2021. That's what I said to my
Wow.
friend. And today, knowing him now, I think I was absolutely 100% on the money.
Yeah, I guess not every relationship, and some of those things you find, you just think, no, me and this person
Yeah.
would not work out. So fast forward a little bit now. So you're married and you have kids of your own. How many children do you have?
One.
Oh, amazing. To fast track a little bit, you're married and you have a daughter now. How did you find the transition from being single, being by yourself, to being married, and then to being a mother as well? I ask because in some of my earlier conversations, it hasn't always been the most, if you like, organic thing, and it hasn't always happened. I had a conversation with a friend of my parents who said she really disliked being a mother for the longest time, and it wasn't until her kids were much older did she come to terms with having grown up kids and being able to have conversations with them. But she didn't enjoy I guess, the younger years, the teenage years, and so I guess it's different for everybody. What was your experience like?
So, I've always wanted to be a mother. I love children, and I love them most at the younger ages. I hope my daughter can hear this.
How old is your daughter now?
She's 21. She will be
Oh
22
wow,
in July. Yeah.
wow, wow.
So, when they're young, they're adorable and beautiful and all that. So, I mean, when we got married, the childbearing thing did not happen, like straight away. It was difficult, and we had to, that actually affected me more than I realized, because here was me, a young lady, kept myself pure and all that, Christian, got married, and I thought it was just gonna happen just like that, and it didn't. And that really shook my faith a little bit. And I think we spent those early years just trying to find out why and all of those things. And it really took a toll on the other aspects of the relationship, the planning, the getting to know one another better and all of those things. So that was the bit that I found difficult. I didn't mind being married, as long as the for me now, unfortunately, my idea of marriage has been colored by the fact that it wasn't a good relationship. But I still am a firm believer in love and marriage, the institution of marriage as God intended it to be. I'm a firm believer, and when I see people who have a good relationship. I kind of love it, and maybe a part of me secretly envies them. So unfortunately for me, it wasn't, it wasn't really like that. It was problematic, and but I think what actually also did keep us together for those number of years was the fact that we wanted to have kids. Both of us wanted to have kids and all that. So that was that phase. And then when the little one came, you know, I kind of was very excited about being a mother, doing everything that I needed to do, cooking and cleaning and all that. At some point, I gave up work, and I was more or less a stay-at-home mom. Because of by this time we had returned back to the UK, and in the UK, there's no house help, there's no this, there's no that. If you want to do it, you do it yourself, kind of thing. So we were going through all of those
Challenges.
changes, and you know the marriage itself was rocky. The foundation wasn't good. And that was a lot to take on. That was a lot to take on. So by the time that the marriage broke down, I didn't have a job. I had a child on my hand, and it wasn't easy. So now going into the teenage years was really quite challenging for me. And that was because my daughter was also reacting to the fact that we had broken up.
Did
You
you
know,
did you break up when she was a teenager?
she was 12 when we broke up. So she was just preteen, like she used to say then. She was preteen. So all of those teen years, I was navigating it by myself. And it was challenging. She was dealing with changes within herself and all that. And she was dealing with this massive change of her parents not being together again. So that was really, really massive for us. So when people talk about teenagers now, I kind of understand, and we've weathered that. But the good thing is that even though I say that the best periods that I like is when they're young, when they're so lovely, you dress them up, and I'll do our hair, and all of those kind of things. I loved that. But we have a very, very good relationship now. We've come through all of that rough period, and you know and as she's growing older, she's understanding more of what happened, because back then she just could not understand. Our little cozy family was broken up, and why, and she was just reacting and rebellious and whatever. So now we have a really, really strong relationship. It's just me and her. Yeah. So that's that's my own experience of bringing up a child. I still believe it's the most rewarding, but it's the most challenging job ever, ever. I mean, forget about all the distraction of the relationship. It's the most challenging because some of the questions my daughter asked me, I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't know. I remember, I think when she was in year two, she came home and said she had a crush on a boy. I was like, oof. I wasn't expecting to deal with that so early. I was like, what? She was like, yeah, I like him and he likes me too. And in this country, they can
Yep.
say just about anything. The
Yep.
things that we were never allowed to say. I was like, oh my days, Lord help me.
You there were some things you said earlier on, and I have to say, because of the nature of what you're discussing or what you're talking about, your candor is very different. You don't sound pained or strained to talk about, how your relationship sort of came to be what it is now. And sometimes with something so touchy, while you're going through it, you can be very tunnel visioned, because all you see is the situation in front of you. But it sounds like hindsight is at play in the sense that you're able to then sort of see the things that could have contributed to how things played out. Are there some things that hindsight from where you are now still cannot heal? Does that make sense? Are there still things where you're like, even though I can look back now and understand how we got to where we got to, but are there still things that kind of hindsight still cannot, heal?
Yeah, I mean, I wish it hadn't happened the way it had. I mean, I like Cher. If I could turn back time, I wish I could go back in time and do it all over again and have the nice Christian marriage and 4 children and all of that. I'm a dreamer, a fantasizer. So yeah, I wished I can't change that. Hindsight cannot heal that. But, you know, in life, I mean, we're all dealt with different hands, and how you then cope with it. It's like saying, you know, I'm too tall, I want to be short. It's never gonna happen. You're just going to dress that tallness the best way possible. So it's happened, and I can't go back in time. So I am just living in my truth. A lot of healing had to take place, because, and yes, when you're going through it, sometimes you don't even know. Like, I didn't even know that I was going through anything. One of the things that brought it home to me was after the divorce and everything. And I think it was even 5 years after the divorce when I kind of went public with it.
Wow.
And a friend of mine who had known me as a teenager, she said to me, she said, I knew there was something wrong. I just could not place my hand on it because I just looked at you and you were not the taller that I used to know. And she said, now that you say that, now I understand what was going on. But I didn't
Interesting.
I didn't know that I was any different. And the people who knew me from secondary school, the people who knew me while I was married, the people who now know me now, they will tell you that I've gone through like phases. But at each point in life, all we can do is live through our truth, live through the pain, heal from the pain, and then use that. I mean, it was one of the things that led me into coaching. Um, because now many women come to me, not because I advertise it or anything, but I could be talking about something else, about, finances. I could be talking about digital marketing. And it comes back to that point. And one lady within my digital marketing group was saying to me, she's in a toxic relationship. And the moment she opened her mouth and started to talk, I was like, oh my days, because I could relate 100%, 100%. And you can't tell anybody to walk away from a marriage, but I just shared with her what I would have wanted somebody to share with me had that opportunity been there. Because in my own, when I was going through it, divorce wasn't, just things that you spoke about like this. People talk about it now. There's a lot more openness in talking about it. A lot has happened. There have been cases of gross domestic violence that has led to death, that has led to all kinds of things. So people talk about it more now. I was completely isolated. I I I was the one that applied for the divorce, by the way. I applied for the divorce and got the divorce without speaking to a soul. And I mean,
Wow.
not one person, not my
Wow.
sisters, and we're close. I didn't say anything to anybody. I did everything by myself. In fact, when I had to tell my when we left home, of course, I had to tell my daughter that we are going somewhere else. And I took her to school in the morning, in the afternoon, picked her up and took her to a particular eatery, and we sat down together and made sure she had eaten and was fed before I told her. That was the
Wow.
first human being that I told. So, and that level of isolation is not good. It's definitely not good. And so people who are going through that, if I can be, a listening ear for them, if I can help them through that. And a lot of people, because I'm a financial coach, a lot of people have helped with navigating the finances after the marriage is no longer there. A lot of things happen, people wanting to sell the house and stuff like that. So I've been able to help people in those kind of scenarios. And it takes somebody who you've come to terms with who you are. You've accepted yourself for who you are. If you've gone wrong, you've accepted you've gone wrong. I often said to people, I forgive my ex. I do forgive him. Sometimes it's myself I can't forgive. you know. It's easier to forgive the other person, but you were a Christian. You prayed. You talked to people. How did you not know? How did you not? It was myself that I couldn't forgive. Yeah, I think I think I've forgiven myself, but there are sometimes that I still kind of feel like, you know, but it takes somebody who, whether you're bitter or you're angry or you're whatever, it is what it is. And your outlook on life is going to help with other relationships, is going to help with the way you raise your children. Because at the end of the day, they are looking at you and they are seeing whether you're bitter, angry, twisted, and all of that, whether you're trying to score points against the other person. And, I've been in a position where I even paid money for my daughter to go and see her dad. So, yeah.
That's incredible. There's two things that jumped out at me just while you were speaking, and the first is how remarkable it is that you are able to talk about it like this. And I have to say, in my experience with Nigerians over, I guess, over the age of 50, or even in general, just in the Nigerian community, speaking about divorce isn't something that anybody wants to speak about. It's kind of a hush subject, and if you find out somebody is divorced, you kind of don't talk about it. It's just kind of it's pushed away. No one ever discusses it. So I have to say, it's remarkable that you, one, are clear-minded enough to speak about it without any of the taints. Or I guess to me, it sounds like without any of the taints. And then the second thing I wanted to ask you was, being that you both were Christians, and I'm assuming you still are a Christian,
Absolutely.
has there been, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, what, if any, stigma has there been, or have you experienced since making that decision? Are there, you know, has there been any stigma just from people who used to know you married and people who know you are no longer married?
Uh, Thankfully, not much. And the thing is, the church that I go to is quite diverse, and I have to say that my church has been um, a place where I can be myself. I'm in leadership in my church. They know I'm single, I'm divorced. I have my responsibilities and things like that. So that has been the only things that I've observed. Some people will just say something or ask some question that you would have thought, nah, that's not the way to go about that. And that's one of the things that has made me even more vocal about my experience, because if you don't speak your truth, then people will give their own version of it. They would say, oh, all single mothers are this. And if you're keeping quiet and you're just trying to, avoid eye contact with everybody, they will go along with that story. So, but if you speak your own truth, then I was on a live stream maybe a few months ago and they were bashing single women and single mothers, and they
What?
were it was really heated.
Wow.
So I said I wanted to talk. And the host gave me permission to talk. And I really tore into some people because I was like, this kind of attitude is not helping. Even if somebody has made a mistake, there was a lot of judgment being thrown around and all of this, that. And I know that for some people it's their fault and maybe they've made the mistakes and all that, but nobody needs that level of judgment. A friend of mine told me, she's one of the people that I helped with their finances. She told me that the church she used to attend, and she used to be a worship leader and all of that stuff. The, she will greet the pastor in the morning, and by the time he gets onto the pulpit to preach, he was preaching about her story. And I said to her, "What are you still doing in that church?" Yep. Eventually, she left. because she just could not bear it. Some people are of the opinion that you shouldn't divorce under any circumstance, and I don't agree with that. There are certain circumstances where it's acceptable. Not every circumstance, it's not like, oh, I don't like your face in the morning, I'm gone. No, no, that's
But
not
you know that. But
biblical.
you know that level of. I'm not about to say. I'm not about to blanket statement and say that that's kind of what it's like now. But if you like, the ethos now does favor women empowerment to the point where, for any reason, a woman or a man can decide to be done with the relationship. Could be something arbitrary, and that's kind of become the, is it pandemic, epidemic? It's become the norm now, and some marriages don't last as a result of it. So not even because of any traumatic incidents or infidelity or anything like that, or it could be, but it just seems marriage isn't given these there's an old word, the endurance that is required to
Mm.
see it through. And I know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I agree to an extent. But you see, if we look at the symptoms without looking at the root cause, then we're going to come to the wrong conclusions. I think some of the things we're seeing is a reaction over time. Let me tell you, some of the things my daughter says to me, she will be like, you should have left. Oh, why did you do? So it's a reaction. It's a reaction because she's seen the pain that her mom has gone through. And she has now formulated this idea for herself that no, I'm not going to allow that to happen to me. So when you're looking from one generation to the other, you would see a different slant. Younger people now would say, if I see one red flag, I'm gone. We saw like 50, 100 red flags and we stayed. So that's the thing. It's that shift. It's all the stories that they've had that they're now reacting that, no, 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 no. I won't let my own be like that woman. So,
But do you think?
Yoruba
Do you
will
think?
say,
Oh, sorry, go on.
Yoruba says the person who fell into a ditch has become a lesson for the other people. So those of us that have had this experience, we've become like a pointer for other people, and they are saying, I don't want that to happen
Yeah.
to me. So that's why there seems to be this massive shift. And we're still not dealing with the problem. We have gender wars going on. We have half-baked people becoming husband, wife. Some people don't know what their roles and responsibilities are. We're not dealing from when I was in year one at the age of 19. In my own fellowship, we had sisters fellowship, but there was no brothers fellowship. And I said, when are they gonna have brothers fellowship? And all of them looked at me as if this one doesn't even know anything. So
Yeah.
sisters needed to be prepared for marriage. We learned how to bake, we learned how to cook, we learned how to dress, we
Wow.
learned how to dress a table, we learned how to do all of these things, even if we hadn't been taught in our own homes. Brothers did not learn a thing, nothing. And all they feel that they're responsible for is that I have a job, I'm paying the bills, at least for the ones that do even have the jobs. So the communication, the accountability towards one another, non-existent. And then we also were of the generation that we were brought up to say, oh, you got to be patient. When you go into your husband's house, it's like a never-ending school. Which kind of never-ending school is that one? So we endured a long, long while. And sometimes when I look back now, I was in that relationship for 21 years. 21 years. When I look back now, I was like, so what were you hoping to happen?
So would you say along the time there were times when, knowing now, where you think you should have opted, you should have made that decision sooner? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. That's the
Wow.
only regret that I have. I should have done it
Wow.
sooner.
Wow.
Absolutely. So now imagine somebody now hearing my story and sees themselves living that same kind of scenario. They will want to do it sooner. So if we are now judging them and saying, oh, people are not giving it a chance, sometimes it's better to walk away quickly. There were problems in the first year of my marriage, serious issues. I remember myself crying myself to sleep in the first year of marriage.
But
Now,
some people might argue that those are every marriage has the the teething phase where you're
it
learning
depends
each
on what
other.
the nature of the problem is.
That is
It
true.
depends on
That is
what the
true.
nature of
That
the
is true.
problem is. Now that I look back, after what's this year? This year would have been 31 years if we had still been together.
Wow.
So I'm talking about 30 years ago, I could see I there were some problems. Now I say to myself, maybe I should have walked away just then. And now some of the impact that he's had on my child, that would not have happened because I wouldn't have had the child in that relationship. Maybe I would have been able to remarry and have children somewhere else that would have been safer for them. So those are some of the things that I think about as well. So who is to say when is the right time to do it? I know that because I stayed, there was no iota of doubt in my mind as to what I should have done. In fact, it's like I had overstayed. So, but you live and learn, you live and learn. And sometimes it's not just the nice stories that we learn from, we also learn from the hard knocks that life brings our way. And I tell you, who I am today is a sum total of everything that I've been through. So I can't deny that aspect of my life.
That's amazing. I'm going to pivot then because I know that you are a finance coach now, and I know you touched on it earlier on to say that there are some conversations you've had, and you've had to lean into your experience to sort of bring somebody from where they are and sort of help them out in a coaching framework, if you like. Has there been any scenario where it has been so similar to what you've been through, and they've made different choices? Has there been scenarios where you've seen somebody in a situation both financially and also in marriage where you've seen that this person is exactly where I was, and through your coaching, but somehow they made a different choice, and how did that go?
So, one that comes to mind, a young lady that I actually met her via social media, and we became close, and we had this mother-daughter relationship kind of. And she got married, and after a while, she started complaining, and I did ask her some real probing questions.
What are some of those questions? So for example, I'm thinking of a friend of mine who without going into any sort of thing like that, but a friend of mine who I think can benefit from some of those probing
Mm,
questions.
mm.
Um, what would you, yeah, if you give me an example of some of those probing
So,
questions.
some of the things I asked her was that, okay, because it was like first year of marriage, she was already complaining. And I said to her, how long did you guys court for? What was the relationship like when you were dating and all that? And, her answer was that it was a long distance relationship. Somebody was living in one city and the other person was living in another city. They only saw each other weekends sometimes. Then they will go to church together and stuff like that. I said, did you talk about your aspirations? Because she is a very ambitious young lady. She's a hard worker. She is like having two, three siblings after her, and she was responsible for them. And she was pushing herself. She was doing so much. She was doing certifications upon certifications. She was doing all of those things. And her husband was laid back. And in his mind, it was like, I didn't beat you. I didn't curse you. I didn't. So what are you complaining about? That was the kind of general. And she was kind of frustrated and agitated. She tried to get him to do some of those certifications, tried to get him another job. At a point, she was earning more than him and say, oh, you to go for this job and everything like that. And he was just like, why are you stressing yourself? So from day one, there was like a gap. Yes, it wasn't it got to a point they weren't sleeping in the same room and all that. So when she told me that, I said, it has gotten to the point that you're not sleeping in the same room. What exactly is going on? So I started to ask her questions and questions. And then all of these things came out and all of that. They didn't really know each other. And I was like, what do you want in a relationship? What do you want in a man? And she described what she wanted. Somebody who was a go-getter. That wasn't her husband. It wasn't.
Yeah.
And, I had to say to her, you're trying to change this guy. You're trying to make him who he is not. You should have seen that all along. You should have made your choice based on what you wanted. So, in the end, they decided to go their different ways. I think in the end, it was actually the guy that actually filed for a divorce because
Wow.
it just wasn't working. They were trying to keep it together. And this is another thing for us as Christians. We always try to keep it together because it's like, I know for the longest time, I think it took me almost 10 years to finally be able to say, yes, I'm going to go for a divorce.
Wow.
Even from when I knew that this marriage was, hopeless. But it then became, what will people say? And I think that's maybe a Nigerian thing, maybe an older generation thing. What will people say? And especially because of my background in my fellowship and all that, oh, Sister Tola this, Sister Tola that. And it took me a long while. It got to a point I had to say, it's not a matter of what will people say. Are you going to die in this thing? You have to think about yourself, before you start thinking about what will people say. And then I thought about my family, in the whole of my family, both my dad's side, my mom's side, extended. Nothing like, not that they didn't have trouble with their marriage, but they all stuck with it. So even my daughter said it to me, I think as a teenager, you're the first person that has ever. Okay.
It's definitely common in your generation to stick at something dysfunctional. I think it's a badge. It's a badge of. I guess, accomplishment or achievement that it doesn't matter how bad it's gotten. I've stuck it through, and some of it is commendable. Some of it is a bit like what you're describing, which is you regretting, having been in it for as long, even when you should have made the decision sooner. But yeah, I do see in your generation, in my mom and dad's generation, there's a certain badge of I suffered through it and, I've come through it. And sometimes actually it gets in the way of communicating between our generations because what we value doesn't seem to be the same. We don't value that suffering, if you like. I have to put air quotes because we don't value that suffering to the same degree. And I think it maybe it has to do with how both generations were brought up or in the kind of worlds that they were brought up in. What do you think, what has been your biggest challenge in communicating to somebody of my generation? So I'm in my 30s, right? I know your daughter's in her 20s, but I guess if we just group ourselves together, because we're in the same sort of generation, especially when it comes to society, how we think and stuff. So what would be your biggest challenge in communicating with somebody from my generation? Or what has been, sorry.
Yeah, I would say that I happen to be, I don't want to use the word liberal, but I am somebody that I can relate with different generations. And I know that, even in our work and things like that, if I don't tell people my age, they won't know. And because I also have the playful side to me, so me and my daughter, we could start dancing and jumping all over the place, and if you didn't know, you wouldn't even know that she was my daughter. We could do all kinds of silly stuff together and go on holiday together and stuff like that. And from day one, because I didn't have that with my mom, I love my mom to death. She's a strong woman. She's done so much for us. But we didn't, there were things that we didn't talk boys. Oh, I made up my mind from day one that for me having a daughter, I was going to be the number one person in her life. I would be able to talk to her about, we talk boys, we talk the S word, we talk everything. There is nothing that we can't put on the table. Nothing. I made up my mind. Even when I talked about her having a crush on, I handled it my ex was there. Her dad was there. He was just looking at her as if, what is this one saying? There were things that he just couldn't handle. I made up my mind that, I would rather be the one to explain it to her than for her to go and learn a different explanation from us. I know if you talk to her, she will still say that I don't get it because, yeah. But I think that for somebody my generation, I try. And I also talk to parents. I have a lady who's my friend, and she's of the Muslim faith, and she's raising British children in this Britain, and she's a very strong Muslim. And I say to her, there are ways you will talk to these guys, and there are ways you can't talk to them. You are raising them in this environment. You can't expect them to do what you were doing in your village in Nigeria. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. So it's still challenging because, like I said, my daughter will still tell me, "Oh, mom, you don't understand. You don't understand." And I'm like, I'm trying to understand. Help me to understand,
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
one thing is we talk. This morning we've had a long conversation already about something, We talk. We talk. We breach that. And I say to her, help me understand. I think that for those of us who are like the older generation, we need to listen more. We need to not think that we know everything, because yes, we have the years of experience, but we're not in their world. We're not seeing the same things that they see. We're not I mean, most of my generation don't even know how to use social media very well. I do. So you're not seeing what they're seeing on Instagram and all of those things. You're not having a conversation with ChatGPT on a daily basis, like some of them are doing. Yeah. So you don't know what they're facing. You think you do. You think I've been a teenager before. I've been in my 20s before. Yes, you have. But you were in your 20s without any
It's
internet,
very different,
without mobile
very
phone. I
different
was in
now.
my 20s without mobile phone, without internet, without social media, without any of these things. So it's a different
Very
world
different world.
entirely. It's a different world. And we have to help them to navigate it. Also be part of what they're doing. Try and understand what they're doing. If they're on Instagram, you better be on Instagram as well, so that you can understand what is going on and you can guide them. And don't think that it's not just about, I'm your mother, this is what I say. Try and reason also. Try and have a conversation and reason, and try and find out where they are at. You will find out. I mean, I have discovered over the years that my daughter is a level-headed human being. I've discovered that by myself, you know, even when, the teenage years when she was kind of rebelling, I have had her having conversations with her friend, and I'm like, wow, what wisdom. She's talking to a friend and advising them, and almost parroting what I probably would have said. And
Wow.
I'm like, I didn't know she had it in her. And I would just tiptoe and I just disappear because she doesn't want me to know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and over the years, she's, even nowadays, I say, you are a self-aware young lady. She's very self-aware. But if you just assume that, oh, all these British children, they're spoiled, you won't see the gems that are
Yeah.
coming out.
Yeah.
My daughter and I were different. I'm a financial person. I'm a book person. She's a very creative person. She's music. She's into her music. She's into dancing. She's into makeup. She's into hair. So if I was to compare her with me, it would just be chalk and cheese. So I allow her to be herself. I encourage her creativity. I talk to her. I say, I don't know too much about this thing, but this looks really good to me. Well done. So we have to be their cheerleader. We have to be there. And that is not to say we don't discipline. My parents were strict. My daughter will tell you I'm strict as well. There have been times that I've locked the door and I said, you are not going anywhere, Missy. And that's that. And I remember one, she wanted to go to a party. This was when she was turning 16. And she said, 16-year-old party. And I said, oh, where's the invitation? By the time I saw the invitation, I was afraid because the hours there, the venue, the everything, I was like, you are not going. She started crying, she started talking, she started saying, I said, you're not going. And that's my final word on that.
Wow.
And lo and behold, I don't think it took 10 minutes. After she'd finished crying and everything, she just screamed, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. I said, what have I done again? And she was like, you know that party? I said, yes, the one that you're not going to. She said, the police has gone to round them up.
Wow.
Right,
Wow.
right. And she
Wow.
was like, thank you, Mommy, for saying I shouldn't go. 1 minute ago, she was laughing me up. Ah, she said, thank you. I said, I know what I saw in that thingy. I saw the house, I saw the venue. I said, why did they underage drinking? I said, of course I knew that that was going to happen.
Wow.
Of course I knew. And there were, because it was a hall, one kind of location like that, there were no adults there. All of these young children. You're not going, sweetheart. I'm sorry. You're not. So I can put my feet down. I can be the nice. We can cook together. We can bake together. We can dance together. We can do silly things. We can record.
Yeah.
But when it's time to be mom, I show up. I show up big time. So it doesn't mean that you cannot. And I tell her, I say, I'm your friend in one regard, but again, I'm not your friend because I will tell you hard truths that nobody else will tell you. But you will know that 100% I love you more than any human being on earth. And she knows it. She knows it. Whenever she gives me Mother's Day present or birthday present, if you see the wordings she will write, you would think that we've never fought one day in our life. It's not true. So the challenges are there because, and I've got a nephew, and I always say to my nephew as well, I say, you guys should give us credit. Our generation, we couldn't say jack to our parents. And then all of a sudden, you are coming and like that to us. You should give us a lot of credit.
You're having to parent in a way that you were not parented. It sounds like you're very proud of your daughter, and I think you should be. From what it sounds like, your relationship has blossomed into. I think there's so much there to be proud of. How do you think we can encourage more conversations, I guess, like this, where people of my generation, both men and women, are able to learn from some of your life experiences, particularly some of the more difficult decisions you've had to make? How do we have more of these conversations? Because some of these conversations, I have to be honest, before starting this podcast, I would have classed them not taboo, but it wasn't, you didn't find these conversations. You didn't find them happening in a way where somebody else could listen to a conversation like this and identify with what's being spoken about to say, oh yeah, my upbringing was also like this, or I also know somebody who's been through this experience. And it always makes me think we should be having more of these conversations. How do you think we can make more conversations like this happen?
When you're able to stay in touch with your vulnerability, it gives you a kind of strength. It's not somebody else that is saying this about you. You're the one acknowledging, okay, yeah, this is it. And then you can learn from that. So if we're more open, so the older generation believing that they can learn from the younger generation also knowing that they can learn from the older generation. And these conversations are important. I mean, when my mom turned 90,
Is your
we
mom still alive?
introduced, she's
Oh,
92
that's
now.
nice. Oh, amazing.
She's actually here with me at the
Oh,
moment.
wow. Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
So we tried to write her memoirs. We got her to tell about her story, her parents, because we just felt like we don't know how much longer that we have with her, and we will want to record these things. We will want to be able to share them with our children, with our grandchildren, and that's also something that I've been deliberate about. So my daughter never met her granddad on my side, and I told her stories about my dad. Some of them she liked, some of them she didn't like, and but it feels as though she knows her granddad, even though they never met,
Yeah.
because I told her those stories, and even stories about Nigeria, how they were strict and things like that. And some of them she didn't like them, but that is the reality. And I always said to her, if we had been living in Nigeria, that's what you would have gone through yourself, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So back in those days, they used to do like story time, folklores and stuff like that. And there were
Yes.
stories that they handed over
Oral
from,
tradition.
oral
Yeah.
tradition, exactly. And we seem to be losing that. So we can record these things. We even have the opportunity for it now. You can have a YouTube channel to record
Or a
things like
podcast like
that.
this, you know.
Yeah, podcast, exactly.
Yeah.
So we should encourage the communication. We should
Yeah.
not stifle creativity. We should encourage people who have the skills to do these things. And I think the older generation also want to feel needed and wanted. They don't want to feel like they're past it. They don't want to feel like, what do you know? You can't even use the internet. So what are you going to teach me in today's world?
That is
While we
interesting.
say to the older generation, try and learn some basic computer skills, try and know what your children are doing. Digital transformation is the in thing now. Learn those things so that you can also be part of your children's life and your grandchildren, even because now they're talking AI and all of those things. So try and learn those things. But at the same time, I mean, when I started to do TikTok and I didn't know how to edit, it was my daughter that taught me how to edit on TikTok. That's something that I
Wow.
didn't know.
And you don't find
But
many 60-year-old Nigerian women on TikTok. I don't think that's a community that's that's ripe. No.
Well, there are actually a few of us, to be fair, because I've got some in my group, and I've
Wow.
even got a lady who is my elder sister's classmate. So she will be about 63, 64.
Wow.
So there,
Wow.
there are a few of us. I think I know at least about five or so, and we call ourselves the 60s gang, something like that.
Oh, I like that. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
Before,
Uh,
because I forgot to hit record, I'll just repeat what I said earlier on about how more we can have more of these types of conversations. And yeah, so thank you so much for sharing that. I think it is important to have the oral tradition because I'm not in your family and I'm not in your home, but your experience and how your daughter is able to leverage what you've been through will only go to her. It won't go to a community of other people who
yeah.
could benefit from your
Mm,
experience. It's just
mm,
the one to oneness, and I guess I'm biased because I'm rebelling against the way the world is siloed now, and everybody is working from home or just living your life in pockets. So in my mind, anything we can do to sort of foster the community and have people hearing from, like a digital campfire. Everyone sat around the digital
mm,
campfire
mm.
listening to somebody say something about their life,
Yeah.
something. I think it's so vital, so needed, and it's kind of it's what keeps the passion for this platform and this podcast going. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I think that's where people are evolving to now. It's not just, following each other on social media. People are creating communities around their passions and helping people to make sense of it. So yeah, it's a very valid point,
Yeah,
which we seem to have lost, especially for those of us who live in diaspora. We don't have too much in terms of family and friends around.
yep,
Depending on where you're living, people in
yep,
London, they may be able to have that community feel. Some of us don't. So we need something to help us bridge that gap. That's
100%.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm gonna, for my last question, this is something I always ask every guest on the podcast. Is in your instance, I might do a little gender swap. So I'd like to get some kind of advice from you, assuming that I am a 30-something-year-old woman, and I'm not, but and I have a young family. I have one, maybe two children. What would you say was the biggest thing you have to say to me by way of advice? What would be the key thing that you think, from your experience, hey, look out for this, or here is something that I wish I knew at your age, something like that.
Mm. I would say to a young woman who has a young family, I would say don't neglect yourself.
Mm,
Don't lose yourself in the process. We as women, we are brought up to care and nurture, and sometimes we lose ourselves in the process. You know, Recently I've just heard of the passing of two of my aunties. Now, Their husbands were older, their husbands were even frail, but it's the woman that passed.
Wow.
Because a lot of times they carry, I mean, that generation at least, they carry a lot of the burden, a lot of they carry the pregnancy, the child rearing, and all of that, and also the mental. And because we are brought up to be givers, sometimes you forget about yourself. You forget about yourself completely. And I was that person, your health, your looks, your whatever. And then all of a sudden you wake up one morning and you don't even have the strength to do anything anymore. So you're in your 30s, you still have the strength. Look after the body that houses who you are. Look after, remember your own self. As you're running around those kids and looking after them, it's your responsibility. Breakfast, going to school, school run, and all of those crazy things that we do when they are young. Remember yourself. When they've gone to school, book a spa appointment. Do you know that I had never been on a spa until last year, July? Never.
Wow.
When I say never, I mean never. It just never occurred to me.
Wow. What were you?
And I only went on that spa because it was my daughter's 21st birthday and I gave it to her as a present and took myself along.
Wow.
And when I did it, I was like, oh gosh, we should do this more often. But we
Yeah.
forget ourselves. So that's what I would say to a young woman. Don't forget yourself. Have your own voice. Don't just do my husband, my husband, my children, my children, my children. And then you forget yourself completely. And by the time you are awakened to it, it's too late. You have the aches and the pains to go with it. And I would say to a young man as well, today you might be strong and you're the man and maybe your voice is what carries the weight, but also remember that in your latter years, you're going to rely on somebody else. That strength will no longer be there. Maybe you're going to be relying on your children. Maybe you're going to be relying on your wife. So whatever authority that you think you have now, wield that authority with compassion and with love. A lot of our fathers made that mistake. I'm talking from, they made that mistake. They ruled with an iron hand. And then later on in years, they wanted their kids to be close to them. It didn't happen. Because, not because the children hated the dads, but it just did not happen. Yeah, too much had happened for too long and there was no coming back again. It just did not happen. And people think, oh, she's my daughter. She has to do what I say. It doesn't work anymore these days. So this generation didn't even get that memo.
Nope.
Nope. Nope.
Nope.
They didn't get that memo. And even the ones that got the memo, they tore it up. So you see,
Yeah.
in everything that we do, love and compassion, knowing that, I mean, my mom is 92. She's not steady on her feet anymore and all of that. And I am the one having to care for her. The roles have been reversed completely. When we were young, she was caring for us and she did everything in her power for us. So guess what? I want to do everything in my power for her. So even when sometimes maybe she's a little bit argumentative, I just remember this woman did a hell of a lot for you. You just have to suck it up, my dear, and just do it and do it and do it and do it. Because hey, like one of my friends said, she's closer to 100 than anything else. We don't know how much longer she's got.
That is true.
And it's only the memories that you would have thereafter, So that, in fact, I've been making fun of myself that this is what I'm going to look like when I'm old. I can see it now. Today something happened. I forgot something in the freezer and it broke, and my daughter was rolling her eyes at me and all. And my mom was saying, me too, I forget. I said, I'm already this bad at this age. Only God knows what I will be when I'm your age. In fact, even me, I know that it's going to be bad, So we got to remember that there is a future. When you're in your 20s and 30s, you feel like you're invincible. You feel like there's nothing you cannot do and da 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 da. I'm about to be 60 now, and I know. I know. The
How do you
aches
feel?
and pains, I know.
Well,
So,
beyond the physical, how do you feel, I guess, looking at 60? How do you feel?
I'm kind of excited. I can't believe I'm 60, to be fair. I have a young mind. That's what I would say. I have a
I was
very,
about to, yeah, I was about to ask, how old do you feel? Like how old do you feel in your
I feel
mind?
like 30 something. I
Wow.
have a very young mind. I have a young outlook on life, and I think I'm going to carry that for long. But my body did not get the memo. So I have the aches of a 60-year-old,
But
but
the mind of a 30 something year old.
yeah, my mind is like that, and I love all of this social media, everything. So really, I have the mind of a 30 something year
You
old.
do, and it's funny. It's funny that you also see that in yourself. But that would be a way to summarize our conversation, or to summarize your personalities. I would say you have a very young mind, and usually you get the opposite where people say, you have a younger people who have an old mind. You're seen as like you're wise because you're old for your age or whatever. But to be speaking to you, and it seems like you're not as young as me, but it seems like you're just as young. Like I could be talking to somebody who was closer in age to me. So that is, yeah, strong credit to you.
Thank you.
Would you say that the way
Thank
to
you
have
very
a
much.
would you say the way to have a young mind, and this will be the last thing for I guess other people turning 60 this year. What is the secret to having a young mind? What is the thing that would help them the most to de-age themselves?
I think it's more of personality, I think I think Nigerians generally were brought up to want to be older than you are, to carry yourself in a kind of way, to grow a beard, to leave your hair white and all of those things. And so that people will not say, Palema, yes, ma,
Yeah,
that
age
kind
is
of thing.
wisdom. Yeah.
I think it's just and it's a psychological thing. Um, I don't know that I've ever wanted to be old. Honestly, I don't know that I've ever. Now, when I think about it, 60, I'm like, how did we get to that? Sometimes when I think about it, but I also embrace it. Like, I want to, I've never really had a party. So I want to have a party for my 60th. I think some people actually don't believe that I'm going to be 60. I want to let them know that it's true. I'm 60. I'm just like this. So I think it's personality, and I think me being second to the last also was a contributory factor. When I'm with my sisters, I still behave like a baby. you know like I can go into into my sister's wardrobe and say da 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 da, I'm claiming it, and my sister will be olenia ole. So I
Yeah.
think I've gotten away with that over the years, and I think it's just my personality. And maybe I also gravitate towards people who are older than me. So, but even having said that, people still tell me, "Oh, you're very wise." Like I have a couple in church who are in their 70s, and they lead a group, and they will come to me and ask me questions. And there was one day they just asked me one question, and I just said, "Oh, this is how I would have gone about it." And the man was like, "Such wisdom."
Yes.
So I don't know. I would love to say there's something that I did, but no, I think it's just a gift from God, and I just embrace it. When I was younger, I think I used to fight it. I remember when I was in the bank in Nigeria, I was passed over for promotion because they felt I was young,
Wow. Even though
and
you
I was
weren't.
upset.
Wow.
I was upset. And I said to my boss, I said, even if I'm young in age, I'm doing the work already. I'm the one that is doing the work. Why can I not be promoted? So it was shortly before I came back to the UK. And I was like, what is all this ageism? You need to be a certain age. You need to behave in a certain way. I am doing the job. I am holding down this entire department. So what's the problem? And then you as my boss, you couldn't defend me. When they tabled it. You just let them say whatever and you let it pass. And I was really upset. So yeah, it works sometimes and it doesn't work. Sometimes
Yeah.
people think, oh, you look young, and then they'll pass you over. And sometimes people feel like, but I've just like I was saying to my daughter this morning, the conversation we had this morning, one of the things I said is that be authentically yourself. Every other person is taken. You can't live life thinking, what's this person gonna think? What's that person gonna say? Just be yourself. Those who will benefit from you, they will come to you. People come
Yeah.
to me for coaching. Every time I talk about age of my life, see, they're like, no, you're not that age. I'm like, yes, I am. They cannot believe it. But after they've gotten over the initial shock, they can just see, oh, this woman is full of wisdom, and yes, we want to connect with her and all of that stuff. So I just go with the flow. I just be myself. If I feel like joking, I joke. If I feel like jumping up and down, I jump. If I feel like dancing, I dance. You know. But when I'm also serious, I'm serious. And you know, that's
Yeah.
that's just it. Yeah.
Wow, so that's amazing. So, if people want to find out, so you're a financial coach, and you have an online platform. If people want to find out more about what it is you do and potentially become clients and get some coaching or leverage in your life experience, where might they find you?
So I've got a link tree link that contains everything that I do
It'll
on.
be all the links. I mean, you can say it, but I'll add them
Yeah.
in the show notes anyway, so people can always
So
find
it's
it.
just linktree/Coach Tola. Simple.
Amazing. And is there a final takeaway? Is there a final takeaway? Something where I can point people to hear more of this conversation, or similar videos or similar conversations with yourself? Head over to, or is most of it just available via the link tree?
Yeah, via the link tree. So there are different tabs on there. So digital
Right.
marketing, financial coaching, one-to-one, blah, blah, blah. You can get everything on there. So because of my background as an accountant and a financial advisor, my coaching is geared towards finances. And also because I feel like, you can be talking to people about relationship, talking to them about life, talking to them about if finances are not where they ought to be, some of those things will never slot into place. But if you take care of finances, you've actually solved like 90% of the problem
Yeah.
of all the other problems, whether it's relationship, health, yeah, money can buy health, but hey, if you have to pay for surgery, then you need money. So that's why I focus on financial coaching. If you can sort out the money, and even going through the process of sorting out the money, creating a roadmap for yourself, it helps you to address your mindset. It helps you to address what kind of work am I doing? What career should I be into? So you are actually answering so many questions. And even relationship, your money issues can be made worse because of the relationship that you're in, or they
Yeah.
can be made better. And if you figure out who you are and where you want to be, then you figure out who should come alongside and work with you in that. But if you've not figured out yourself, then you fall into certain issues. So I focus on finances, how to make money, how to make more money, how to manage your money, how to invest that money. Now, a lot of people think they have a money problem. And I say, we don't actually have a money problem. We have a mindset problem.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
If you take care of the mindset, every other thing flows through. So some people, I have a friend who has done so well for herself in her business, and she was earning six figures. And then all of a sudden the business dipped and there was no saving, no investment, nothing. And I was shocked. I was like, how? How? You
It
mean
was the
you didn't?
mindset.
So yeah, we don't have a money, but even I have read stories of people who were just this was in based in America, so just earning $20,000 per annum, and they were still able to retire early
Wow.
because they decided to live a very frugal life and were making savings and investing into the right kind of investment. I'm not talking crypto, no, none of that. They were investing into things that nothing is guaranteed, Financial Conduct Authority will come after me if I use that word. But things that are kind of not high risk, what you would call like maybe medium risk, but over time, they did that consistently
Compound
and they were
interest.
able to retire early just on a $20,000 per annum. So and some of us have earned way more than that, and yet we have not been able to retire the way that person retired. So it's not a money problem, it's actually a mindset problem.
Wow. That's incredible and that's amazing. And I think you've brought so much to this conversation, and I have benefited so much. Just not just your life experience, but even just this short little bit about financial literacy. So much to be gained from that. And I honestly want to say thank you so much. Thank you for the time to have this conversation. Thank you for sharing your experience with me and for the wisdom. And thank you also for being candid and being a great guest. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I'll put all the links to where people can find your coaching platform. And I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast might also want to find a way to continue the conversation. I mean, I definitely feel that way. It's just, I feel like if it was possible, I would want to just keep talking to you. So, and I know that many people listening would also want to be able to follow your journey and continue to follow and listen to you more. So all the relevant links will be in the description. And I want to say thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Amazing. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening to that episode. I'd like to know what you think, and drop us a comment. If you are listening to this on any platform that is audio only, still find a way to reach out to us. The email to reach out to is age2agepodcast@gmail.com. And you can find us also on Instagram and TikTok. Look for Age2Age. That's Age, AGE, with the number 2 and AGE. And that takes you straight to where you can find us on TikTok and Instagram. Do share this episode with a friend and subscribe and do all the nice social things that help the platform grow and reach more listeners. My name is Mide, and it's been a pleasure of mine to have this conversation with Mrs. Tola and also for you to listen to it. Thank you so much.